We finally starting the dream build, Dan? Yes, sir, but we're gonna do this video a little bit different. I'm gonna show exactly what parts are going inside and show the entire process for the build. Let's get into it. So the case we're gonna be using is the Lian Li 217 Infinity case, and I posted a short form video about this case about a week ago, and I said this was actually gonna become my main build, and I got a lot of mixed opinions on whether that was a good idea or not, because I've been using my Lian Li 011 Vision compact build now for about a year and a half, and a lot of you absolutely love this build, including myself, but this is actually gonna go in my other room as my second rig, and then this one is going to become my main. So this case is really interesting, and I actually like it a lot, because if we take a look at the front, this is actually just a giant mirror, and you can see me talking with my gimbal right here, but this is a giant infinity mirror. And then we have these two 170mm fans that have these like car speaker grills going over them, which I think looks really cool, but I got a lot of mixed opinions on that front. But I do like this case a lot. We do have the IO over here, which for me works really well because it's really easy to access from this side. We do have mesh down here. We've got a glass side panel. We've got a mesh top panel, our power button, and some of the fan controller buttons are right here, and we'll go over that a little bit later. And we've got a solid back panel, but we do have mesh over here. And then you can also relocate the IO that's down here to up here, but I don't think I'm going to be doing that. So maybe if your PC's down low, you could always change the IO up here so it's more accessible. And then if we take a look at the rear, everything is pretty standard back here. I'm gonna have to remove this plate for my PSU, but we'll go over that a bit later. And we've got our pre-installed 140mm fan in the rear, but let's go ahead and take off these panels and then start talking about the inside and how we're gonna do this build. So the majority of the panels have been removed except the front one. And like I said before, we've got two pre-installed 170mm fans on the front, and then also a 140mm fan on the rear, which I am going to be replacing with a different fan so we can have a matching fan look with the bottom ones and the top. And then pretty much any size motherboard fits in here, as well as back connect. Then we have a bunch of grommets for cable management. We do have a built-in GPU sag bracket. We can mount fans down here. You can fit three 120mm fans. And then the top has a lot of options for different size radiators and fans as well. Then if we take a look at the back, there's a ton of room for cable management. We do have some 2.5-inch drive caddies right here, and then as well as some at the bottom. And then you can fit your power supply in actually two different ways. You can have it so the plug is facing this way, and then you can use this extension cable that it comes with to plug in. So you'd have your power switch and the cable right here, and you'd route that extension, plug it in right here, and then all of your cables will come out this way. Or you can remove this panel, and then obviously your power switch and cable will come out this way, and then all of your cables will come out right here, which is actually what I'm gonna do. So we'll see how that goes, but we do have a ton of room back here, and we do have some Velcro strips as well. And one thing I don't like about this case, but it actually has to have it because of those front fans, is this controller. I think this is kind of an eyesore. So I'm gonna do my best to relocate this, and I've been going over this case for a while, trying to plan it out. I believe I'm gonna be able to hide it down here. So we'll see how that goes. But on that note, I think we should get into hiding that and then the next steps for the build. Okay, so here's where we're at right now. We've got the included fan controller that was originally installed right here, and then we've got it relocated down there, and I'm just using some really strong double-sided tape to keep it in place. And then I'm hiding most of the wires for the front fans kind of behind this panel. So there's some slack, and it's basically just sitting behind there, but we're left with this really clean look. And then I'm gonna have to plug these into the motherboard. We've got a PWM and a 5-volt ARGB. And then we've got all of the front panel connectors. So we've got USB-A, we've got HD audio, and then we've also got USB-C, and then we've got our front panel connector. And then I'm not gonna be using this extension, so I'm actually gonna remove this. And this is kind of a pain to remove, but there's actually some like retention clips. They're like, I don't even know what to call them, but you basically press this in, and then there's 2 down at the bottom, and then you can go ahead and remove this cable. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, but let's go ahead and jump into the next step, and that's gonna be the motherboard. So I'm gonna be using a Gigabyte X870 Aorus Stealth Ice motherboard, and this is one of the cleanest motherboards on the market in my opinion, and it does come in at a really good price. It's normally around $300, and it is back connect, so you can see all of our connections are gonna be on the back side. So it's gonna be a really clean look on the front, because we're basically gonna have no cables. And then we're using a 9950 X3D CPU because I do a lot of gaming, but I also do a ton of video editing. So I'm definitely going to utilize the 16 cores for the CPU. And then we're using 64 gigabytes of Corsair Dominator RAM. And I was fortunate enough to have this before all the RAM supply issues started. And then this stick is 32 gigabytes. This stick is 32 gigabytes. So in 2 and 4. And then in 1 and 3, this is their RAM enhancement kit. So basically the only function it serves is to make it look like I have a full kit and also to have RGB. So basically these are the real sticks and these are the dummy sticks. And then underneath this heatsink right here, we have a Corsair Gen 5 4 terabyte NVMe. So I've got a ton of storage, and it's also really fast because it's Gen 5. So let's go ahead and get this installed. So the motherboard is installed and it looks absolutely fantastic. It matches really well with the case, and then the gray on the motherboard matches really well with the color of the fan grills. So really happy with how this motherboard looks inside of this case. But if we put our attention on the back, we've got all of these cables to manage. So we're gonna get all these plugged into the back of the motherboard in the cleanest way possible. So let's go ahead and get into it. So all of our IO cable management is done, and so far it is looking really, really clean. You can see I've got it kind of bundled all right here and going across. So we've got HD audio, we've got 5-volt ARGB for our controller, we've got PWM for our controller, we've got our front panel connector right here for like our power button, we've got USB-A, USB-C, and those are all kind of just bundled up right here and zip tied. And then some of them are going down to the controller right there, and then some of them are heading back there. And then you can see I've got those all zip tied. So far, really, really clean. The only one I'm gonna have to hide, this is SATA power for the controller down here, but that's actually gonna end up hiding in the drive caddy that sits right there. But we'll take care of that once the power supply is installed. But now I think it's time to jump into what fans that I'm gonna use. So since we're using the Lian Li 217 Infinity case, I thought it was only fitting to use the SL Infinity wireless fans. So these should look really clean with the front fans. And then we've got a mix of reverse blade and regular blade. So we've got 3 reverse blade going at the bottom, and then we have a regular blade on the rear and the top, and these daisy chain together. And one reason I really like these is we have 1 cable plugging into the top, and then you only need this to power them. So very minimal cable management, and then fan speed and RGB is controlled wirelessly. So I really love these fans just for the simple fact that cable management is so much easier. So let's go ahead and get these installed now. So the bottom fans and the rear fan are plugged in, and the bottom fans, the cable is coming around this way and tucked behind the bottom fans right there. But if we look towards the back, you can see the cable comes out and it's tucked right here, and then it's plugged into that fan header. And then the rear fan, the cable is coming down here and it's kind of routed here, and it's plugged into CPU opt. And then my AIO pump is going to plug into CPU fan, and then I'm going to have my radiator fans plugged into this fan header right here. And the cables are kind of a mess right now, but what I plan to do is these CPU cables for the motherboard are going to come up right here and go over. So I'm actually going to zip tie these cables behind the CPU cable, so we shouldn't be able to see them when it's done. So we'll have to see if that ends up working out. But on that note, let's go ahead and jump into the PSU I used. So we're going to be going with the Montech Titanium Platinum PSU, and this is a really clean white power supply, and it is 1200 watts, so it should be plenty for our 5090 we're going to use. And one reason I really like these PSUs, if we take a look at the cables, you can see they're nice and clean, but they're also really thin and they're really flexible. So these are really easy to manage. They look really clean. They're kind of easy to bundle all together. So this should be really good for our build and making sure we have the cleanest look possible and also the best cable management. So let's go ahead and get this installed now. Okay, so the power supply is installed and we are getting closer and closer to the end result. And so far it's looking really good. So the first thing I want to show you guys is the SATA cable. So you can see it's plugged into the power supply right there. And then I have it routed kind of down here, and then it's plugged into the controller SATA, and it's just kind of jammed into this caddy right here. And I'm probably going to clean up these cables a little bit, because you do have to remember there is a mesh panel that sits right here. So some of this is going to be visible, so I want it as clean as possible. But then if you take a look at the rear, you can't see that SATA cable at all. You kind of have to get really low, and you can see it's just kind of tucked back there. So the SATA cable ended up working out really well. And then going to the other power supply cables, Here's the CPU cables. So I've got them going over right now, and I think I'm going to fix this because it's kind of drooping and you can kind of see a little bit of this right here. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of fix this up, make it all nice and tidy. And then I don't know if I really like this, but I don't really have many other options for what to do with it. So I might try to figure that out off camera, but we got the CPU cable coming down right there. Then you can see the 24 pin cable is right over it, and those just kind of go together. And then we've got a little bit of a cable mess down here, but I'm gonna wait until everything is installed to take care of all this, because this is actually our GPU cable. Because if we go back to the front, you can see it's sitting right here. So I want this to kind of be loose so I can manage that once the GPU is in and all level with our sag bracket. So we're getting closer, and you can see the cable management even at this point is already looking really clean. So I think next up, we're gonna check out what AIO I'm gonna go with. So we're gonna be using the Lian Li HydroShift 2 LCDS, and this is actually their brand new AIO. And it has this really large square screen that's gonna be really clean. And one reason I really like this is you have the minimal tube routing. So when it's mounted at the top, you can see we just have this really clean radiator tube run instead of the tubes kind of dangling like this. And then also there's no cables coming out of this pump. So it's extremely clean. All of them are actually routed through right here. So we have all the connections for the pump. And then on this side, we have our fan connection, and then we've got a PWM on this side. So this should look really clean with this entire setup we've got going. So let's get it installed. So the AIO is installed and it looks great, and I much prefer the square screen on this new LCDS compared to the round ones on the other HydroShifts. I just think this one looks much better. And then the radiator looks great. All of the mirrors are visible for all of the fans. And then as far as wiring goes, so that cable over here, I ended up routing it kind of behind here, and then they're all coming out right here. So I thought that was much cleaner. And then now we have no cable over here. So over here we have the rear fan, the AIO pump, and also the radiator fans. Those are both coming down and going to these fan headers right here. And then I lied earlier, I ended up not using this one right here, but they actually come down to right here. So far it is looking really, really clean. But next up, let's take a look at what GPU I ended up using. So we're gonna be using the Gigabyte Aorus Stealth Ice 5090. So this is a really chunky boy and it is really clean. And we do have a screen on the front right here. But one really interesting thing about this GPU is if you take a look at the front, you can see there's actually no power connection. But what they've done is they've actually relocated it to right here. So basically our cable comes in through right here and plugs in right there. And then at most normal viewing angles, we're not going to see that connection. So this is really gonna help with our stealth look and minimizing the amount of cables on the front. So this should look really clean with the stealth motherboard. So let's go ahead and get this installed. All right guys, so the build is all done and holy crap, this thing came out absolutely beautiful. Even better than I thought it was gonna come out. And I know I'm gonna get a lot of mixed opinions on the front end, but I personally like it a lot. I love that infinity mirror, and you can see the lights just kind of keep on trailing until they eventually disappear. So we've got that kind of cool futuristic look, but it's also super functional because we have those two gigantic 170 millimeter fans, because we do have a pretty high spec build in here. So airflow and keeping it cool is definitely one of the main priorities. And I think it's doing just that. So this looks absolutely amazing, guys. Really happy with the finished result. But let's go ahead and turn off all my studio lights and see how it looks in the dark. So all the lights are off, guys. And once again, I've got to say, this looks absolutely amazing. And I am definitely in love with this build, because the lighting that you see right now is pretty much how I use my computer at all times. I just have these two accent lights above that kind of just shine down on my setup. So I definitely like to work and play in the dark, and I just think this looks extremely cool. And then if we look at the front end with all of the lights off, you can see the infinity mirror pops even more. And then I've got the RGB set really low, but the subtle glow of the fans looks absolutely fantastic. So I really, really like how this looks. Big fan. Although it is very similar to my O11 Vision Compact build as far as color of the components and then also RGB. But for me personally, I like just a subtle white light to all of my components, usually more set to warm white, because if we take a look at my O11 Vision Compact build, I pretty much have the same lighting theme going for this build as well. So came out really, really good, guys. But let's go ahead and get the lights back on, get the panels taken off, and then look at and talk about the finished build. So I know we went over all the specs pretty much during the video, but just in case anybody skimmed over that part, let's go over all of them again. We've got a 9950X3D CPU, and that's being cooled by the new Lian Li HydroShift 2 LCD-S, which has this really nice large square screen. And I'm just using one of these stock templates just because I really haven't had the time to make my own. But honestly, for what I use, this is absolutely perfect. You can see we've got most of my CPU vitals, and it does have GPU temp, but I also have GPU temp on my GPU itself. So really clean looking AIO. We've got 64 gigabytes of Corsair Dominator RAM, and 2 and 4 are the real sticks. And then 1 and 3 are the dummy sticks, which basically just fills out all the RAM, and its only function is for RGB, but we have a nice complete set, which looks great. And we've got the Gigabyte Aorus Stealth Ice X870 motherboard, which is back connect and looks really, really clean in here. We've got a Corsair Gen 5 NVMe, and it's 4 terabytes, and it's under that heatsink right there, right above the GPU. And then we've got the Gigabyte Aorus Stealth Ice 5090, which is probably very overkill, but at the same time, I also worked with Gigabyte on this during its release several months ago, so I'm definitely gonna go ahead and use it, and it should obviously work out great for gaming and editing. And then all of the fans are the Lian Li SL Infinity Wireless, which I think match really well with the included fans because they have the same type of look, so really, really clean. And these fans do have two options. One side has just the rectangular look, and then the other side has like a 5-sided type look. So I decided just to go square, and I just think this looks really, really good. So there's all the parts in the front. And actually, I guess we can take a look at the PSU. We've got the Montech Titanium Platinum, and this is 1200 watts. And then taking a look at the front, you can see we pretty much have no cables. So it ended up being cleaner than even I thought it was going to be. And the only cable we can really see is the GPU power cable, which is right there. But you can see when you look at it from most normal viewing angles, you could hardly see that cable. So when I'm sitting at my desk and admiring my build, I'm not going to be able to see that at all. And then taking a look down here, you can see we've got all of our PSU cables kind of bundled up right there, which for right now is okay. I might go and clean them up even a bit more. But the SATA cable is nice and hidden right here, and then going over here, And then you cannot see that from the front once that mesh panel is placed back on. So really clean on this side. And yeah, just the cableless look, guys. Then the minimal tube look too. I just absolutely love how this looks. Because normally you'd have the tubes kind of coming out of the pump down here and then dangling right there, but this look is so much cleaner. Although that does give us some empty space kind of right here, but when you're looking at the PC, this is kind of what you see. So not too mad at it, but there is kind of some unused space. And I thought about going with the Lian Li screen. They have an 8.8-inch universal screen they make now, but there just wasn't any room. And honestly, it would have been too many screens. So I decided just to leave it out, because initially I was planning to mount it right here, but when I did mount it right there, it was actually blocking the GPU screen. So I left it out, and then even as is, I think this looks absolutely fantastic. Then here's the top, pretty much nothing to see. We've just got the radiator up here, but if we go ahead and turn this around and make sure my power cable stays plugged in, here is the cable management, and it is so clean. Definitely took a lot of work, but I think it was worth it. The main thing was relocating that fan controller down here. And you can see from this angle, you can hardly see it. And then the drive caddy definitely pretty much blocks it all. So it came out really clean. And then I have most of the cables kind of bunched up in here, and they're all going straight across right here and then over to their respective spots on the motherboard. So really clean. We've got our CPU cables right here. Got some fan cables right here. And then, like I said earlier, this is our pump cable. This is our rear fan cable, and then also our radiator fan cables. Those are coming down right here and going to fan headers on the motherboard. And we've got our 24 pin, and then we've got those all bunched together. We've got USB-C, we've got USB-A. Those are all right there. Those go that way. And then our PSU cables come down, and they all go down here. So really clean look. Really happy with how cable management came out. And then I think in total, I pretty much had to film every single section and then also break to pull out my gimbal and then talk about the different sections as I was doing them. I think this took me about 6 to 7 hours. So if I wasn't filming at all, I probably could have finished this build with all the cable management in probably 2 to 3 hours. So not much extra work. And in my opinion, this was worth the extra effort. And I know a lot of people are gonna say, you're never gonna see this, but for me, I used to be a mechanic, so doing the cleanest work possible just kind of comes natural after years of being a tech for Toyota. So I think it's worth it. So really clean. Really happy with how this came out. And I also might clean this up a little bit too. And then one thing I thought about doing, but it's probably not a good idea, I thought about 3D printing a panel to go along the front right here, so it kind of blocks all this from the front. But then I thought about it, a lot of the bottom fans get a lot of the airflow through the front, so fresh air comes in right here and goes into the fan. So I don't think it's really a good idea to block this section off, but just an idea I had. I might try it. I mean, I doubt it's gonna make any difference in temperatures, but me being extremely OCD, I'm always thinking about stuff like that. So what do you guys think of the build? Do you think this is a worthy successor to the O11 Vision compact build? Because this build's definitely not going anywhere. This is going to be going in my second office, which is right next to this one. So this will still be heavily used, but this one is going to become the main one. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Subscribe if you enjoy my content, like the video, share it with your friends, comment down below. Let me know what you think. But for me personally, I think it looks absolutely amazing. And the case was super easy to build in. Didn't really run into any issues. And if I was just doing the build regularly without relocating the controller and all that, this case is super easy to build in. So highly recommend it if you're in the market for a case like this. But once again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and then I'll see y'all in the next video.